I call the intestinal lining the Achilles heel of humanity. This is their weakest point, right? Because it was not designed for the insult that it's suffering these days.
Hey everybody, Dr. Josh Axe here. Welcome to the Dr. Axe Show. Today I have one of my favorite guests, Dr. Alejandro Junger. And I read his book years ago. He wrote a book called Clean. And then I read another book of his called Clean Gut. And it was a great book on how to restore and help heal issues like leaky gut and other digestive problems. And the book is just fantastic. He's also an expert in detoxification. And he is the founder and medical director of the Clean program. He's an LA-based cardiologist, and he graduated from medical school in Uruguay. I can just tell you, just generally from speaking to him a couple times now, that the thing that I love about him most is he's got an amazing heart. He just really wants to help people, and he's in it to help see people's lives transformed. And so, Dr. Junger, hey, thanks for joining me today.
Well, thank you for having me, and thanks for that nice introduction.
Yeah, so I know you're an expert in so many different topics, and I know you've studied Ayurvedic medicine, you've studied Chinese medicine, and you're like me, that where you like going back to, you like what the medical research says, but you also like going back to those ancient principles that have stood the test of time. And that's one of the things I respect so much about you. When I read your books, another thing I was so impressed with, I'm just remembering back reading your book, Clean Gut, your analogies are so good in your books. You know, I remember one of your analogies was sort of like a house and our internal systems being like piping and other things. And so you've done such a good job of taking complex matters and simplifying them. And today I really want to focus on detoxification. Now we'll talk a little about gut health and some other things in Ayurveda, but let's talk about detoxification, just kind of to kick us off here. Why is detoxification important today?
So everybody talks about global warming, right? But I see the planet as an animal, and this global warming is a symptom. It's a fever. The planet has a fever, and the cause of the fever is what we should be addressing. And what I see and understand as the cause of this fever is global toxicity. And specifically, the part that I really focus on is the toxicity that we end up inside from outside sources, like the air we breathe, the water we drink, the cosmetics we use, the cleaning products that we use to clean our homes and our clothing with, but most than anything, our food. You know, we don't eat food anymore. We eat edible products. We eat things made in plants as opposed to eating plants. And all these chemicals that we add to our food in order to add taste and color and consistency and to make them durable, these chemicals alone or in combination cause all kinds of diseases, which end up having this epidemic proportion in the world we live in today. So we are toxic blind. And this, I came to the conclusion from my own experience. I came to the United States to be a cardiologist. I wanted to discover things and put stents in arteries, but I got really, really sick, not only from the chemicals, but also from the toxicity of the system of education of medicine that I was living in, with long hours on call, and I got really sick. And it was through cleansing and detoxification that first I encountered in a fasting place in Palm Springs, the We Care Spa. But then I really understood through functional medicine. That's how I really restored my health. And that's why it's so close to my heart, because that as a tool has been my most powerful tool in my medical toolbox in helping people.
Wow. So one of the things, I know we have a lot of people listening and they may be saying to themselves, well, I don't know if, now some people know that they have toxicity. Other people maybe saying, well, I don't know if my health issues are related to, or a friend of mine or a family member, if they're related to toxicity. Can you give some examples of some of the most common symptoms or even conditions that are sort of the warning signs that somebody might have, major issues with toxicity? And I know it's everybody. Let me just say this. I can pre-frame and say, I know everybody has toxins. And my wife and I, we're as healthy as anybody, but we know, hey, there's air pollution. You can't get away from it sometimes. There's radiation from, unfortunately, my computer screen, myself. There's all these different things. But what are some of those symptoms? What are some of the most common conditions? And then am I correct in saying everybody needs to detox?
If you live in a modern city, and I follow you, I've seen that you've been going to New York a lot lately.
Yeah.
If you live in a modern city, an industrialized society, you will be affected by toxicity. And at some point, it may build up enough to show up as a disease, right? But even if it doesn't show up as a disease, all these nagging little things that people are complaining about, the lack of sleep, the lack of good hair growing, and problems in their skin, allergies, all kinds of little nagging problems are very much resolved right away with a good detoxification program, which leads me to think that they're caused by the accumulated toxicity. This is not something that we can, in many cases, in some cases we can detect which toxic chemical it is, right? Unless the reaction is really strong. But it's an accumulation of all these toxic chemicals that we use and that are approved by the FDA and that we commonly feel safe about, right? And if you look around, everybody is having some kind of health issue. Everybody that I know is taking some kind of pill for something. And this is, in my opinion, the result of the toxicity that we live in.
Yeah, absolutely. It's kind of crazy. You look at the number of conditions today that people are struggling with. And as you're saying, I mean, a lot of them are due to toxicity. And again, this is for everybody. Whether you have a health condition or you don't have a health condition, we're all exposed to toxins on a daily basis. And I'll just say just a few I know that I've seen in people over the years as well. A lot of times when people have toxicity, a lot of times, brain fog. I've seen a lot of people have sort of neurological and brain issues. We know, I mean, you look at studies, a lot of people with certain types of neurodegenerative illnesses sometimes have things like aluminum in their brain. I mean, so there are so many categories of toxins, from heavy metals to environmental toxins to food additives to the chemicals in our own, cleaning supply, all these different things. They're all over the place. So for most people out there, here's the other thing I want to say, Dr. Junger, there are majors and there's minors. Most people aren't going to take their cell phones here and just get rid of them, right? We know that this is a source because of some radiation. But what are the majors that people are being exposed to on a regular basis that they can get rid of? Because it's another thing, if somebody's living in New York or LA or Mexico City or somewhere like that, they're, in some of these areas, there's a lot of air pollution, and some people just may not be able to avoid that. But what are the biggest things that we're exposing ourselves to on a regular basis that maybe we can make a swap and do something else or get it out of our life?
Yeah, I agree with you that it's very difficult, and sometimes it's a limitation for people. When they hear that, they just give up because they say this is too much, right? So
Yeah.
we got to give people a way to think about it, that it's approachable, right? And we were discussing before we started recording on how we both are interested in ancient knowledge and,
That's right.
and ancient practices, right? And the reason I am very interested in ancient knowledge and practices is because they are more aligned with nature. This is for me the axis of the way that we should be thinking out. The human body is a piece of art, and doctors are art restoration workers, right? So we are restoring what nature designed and what nature made function really well. And when I am attempting to help somebody with that restoration, what I think is, what would nature do, right? So this is, and this then extends to everything, right? For example, in our foods. So the way I think about it is, if it comes in a tube, in a bag, in a jar, in a can, then it probably has chemicals that maybe are not toxic in the minor quantities in which they come in the containers, and they're approved by the FDA and whatever, but the accumulation of them starts causing problems. For example, preservatives. they are put in the foods in order to preserve their life, their shelf life. And meaning what? They avoid other organisms to grow and eat them up. They kill bacteria. And what is the most important thing that we know now lives in our gut that affects every system in the body is our biome, the bacteria in our body, right? And not only the bacteria, because there's now the fungal biome that people are learning about, and many other things. But all these microorganisms that we need, and then you eat stuff that kill them directly. So everything that you don't find in nature, then try to avoid. And that's the general big rule that I think of.
I love that. It's a great example. And I'll throw out a few out there I know that I see on a regular basis. A lot of times, one of the biggest toxic exposures I still see, Doc, is people are still cooking in Teflon pans. The nonstick cookware. And sometimes we were scraping that stuff with metal forks and everything else. It's just, that is one of the most toxic things I see people using on a regular basis. Drinking tap water. How about that? Nashville actually just got tested here. And I'm glad Chelsea and I bought a water filter that we've used, I've used a water filtration system for the past 15 plus years, but it's kind of crazy as well,
I'm going to show you and your listeners what I have under my sink. It's like this incredible water filtration system with reverse osmosis, microcarbon 3-step filter, an ultraviolet light, and a calcium coral that remineralizes the water. So yeah, I totally agree with you. Those are things that most people don't even think about.
I love that, Doc. A lot of times I get questions now of people asking, hey, what are some of the brands? So do you know the brand of, the water filtration system you have? If not, I know a few good ones I'll just mention here. But
yeah, if you go to oxygenozone.com, this guy called William Wendling, which is my water guru, he actually turned my pool into a non-chlorine pool by putting ozone and ionizers, and he sells some incredible systems there.
So Oxygen Ozone.
Oxygenozone.com.
Oxygenozone.com. That's fantastic. I know there's some other ones. If you're looking for one that's more on a budget that definitely gets out a lot of the chemicals, there's a website called purewaterfreedom.com. I know there's another company called Prescription pH, but oxygenozone.com. And actually we do the same thing. Chelsea and I have a pool, and it's ozone, similar thing. So it's the best way to go for the swimming pools too.
I just wrote a book called Clean 7, about a 7-day program that mixes principles from functional medicine, Ayurvedic medicine, and intermittent fasting into a really powerful detox program that's only 1 week. My previous program was 21 days. And I realized that even though it transforms lives profoundly, not many people were willing to commit to 21 days from the start. So I wanted to give people something to get a jump start, right? And in the first chapter, I describe what the problem that I see is, right? And I relate the story of a person that wakes up in bed, and for 8 hours, hopefully was exposed to all the fumes from the mattress, fire retardants, and from the detergents, from the sheets, and the pajamas or whatever it is that they were using. Then they step on the floor and they go walking to the bathroom, and on the way, all the chemicals that are from the compressed woods that we use for our flooring and the carpets, and then they get to the bathroom, they open the water and they splash themselves and brush their teeth, and all the chemicals that come in the toothpaste and in the water, and then the deodorant, and then the makeup for the ladies, and then the perfume, and then they go have their breakfast, and in their breakfast, not only the Teflon things that people cook with, but everything else that comes in their bacon and their eggs and their muffins, and right. And by the time that you get in your car to go to work, you've been exposed to more than 1,000 chemicals that alone or in combination are known to cause birth defects, infertility, chronic diseases. I mean, it's just remarkable what we're doing to ourselves.
It is. Well, so obviously everybody's hearing this, is that there are a lot of toxins we're exposed to in the environment and our households. So let's start talking about some solutions here, Doc, on what are some things, and I want to encourage everybody, check out Dr. Junger's book. It's called Clean, what is it called?
Clean is my first one. Clean Gut is my second one. Clean 7 is coming out in December.
Clean 7, that's right. And I remember I started flipping through and I went through some of the PDF and it looked fantastic. And I want to encourage you guys, check out his book. Go on Amazon.com right now or BarnesandNoble.com. Go online and check it out. It's called Clean 7. And you can check it out by the doc here, Dr. Alejandro Junger. And, and we encourage everybody to check out the book. Let's talk about some of the things, though, that people can start doing today. Let me ask you first, are there any foods that we can start consuming? Are there food categories that support detoxification?
First of all, the functional medicine talks about the 4 R's, and the first R is remove. So removing the toxins that we are consuming is already a big step forward, right?
Well, let's start there then. What are the big things we've got to remove?
So the first and most is anything that is not found in nature, right? And I know this is a difficult concept because when you go to a supermarket and you take a bird's eye view, 90% of what people are consuming these days as food it comes in some kind of container, right? And only 10% is in the outskirts of the supermarket, which is the poultry, the fish, the vegetables, and the fruits.
That's right.
Right. So it's kind of mind blowing for people to say, well, if I don't eat things from a container, what should I eat? Well, the more that you eat whole foods as you find them in nature, the less exposed to toxins you're going to be. And this is a huge first step, right? And then I saw a post on your website. I think it was very recently about the clean 15 foods, right? Which are the foods that if you cannot afford to buy organic are less likely to have pesticides and all kinds of chemicals, right?
That's right.
So if you educate yourself like that, you can buy organic, whatever is really necessary, and non-organic from the list of foods that are less likely to contain these chemicals.
I love it. So, and by the way, this is such a fantastic recommendation and classic principle. Just remember this: when you're going to the grocery store, stay on the outside. Stay on the outside, the perimeter there, and buy what Dr. Alejandro talked about.
Another way to think about it is, if you go to the supermarket, either imagine that you are with your great grandmother or great great grandmother, and don't buy anything that she wouldn't recognize as edible. And
That's good.
The second thing is, imagine that you're a hunter gatherer, and go there and hunt for your food. So you're going to end up buying either the fish and the meats, or the vegetables and the fruits, right? And also make sure that those don't contain chemicals. Like, for example, if you buy fish, make sure that there's freshly caught in the sea or the rivers, and not from fish farms which load the fish with chemicals. The same thing with meat. Meat that is grass fed has actually some good benefits, but meats that are from cows that are grain fed and given antibiotics and hormones are going to be as toxic as anything in a container.
Yeah, it's a great point there, Doc. I'm glad you brought that up because, again, I did some research on fish years ago, looking at all the studies, and it's amazing that the farmed fish, the levels of dioxins and PCBs, all of these chemicals, medications, all of this that's found in the supply of what they're feeding the fish and then what we're consuming, especially, tilapia is a good example of one of the most farmed fish that is toxic. We know Atlantic salmon is a problem. So as the doc's talking about here, make sure it's wild caught fish, grass-fed beef, natural sources as much as you can. And if you say, well, hey, sometimes I got to be concerned about budget, then do things like canned salmon. Canned salmon, if it is the BPA-free liner, so at least that's better than the Atlantic. Looking at things, buying part of a cow and storing it in a freezer. I remember I did that in college. I was getting turned on to eating healthy, and I learned that buying in bulk, organic and healthier things could sometimes go a long way too, especially if you're on a budget. So there's some thoughts for you guys there.
And the more we shift the demand, the cheaper things become, right?
That's good. And
now places like Costco have aisles of organic stuff, and it's cheaper than Whole Foods, right?
Totally. All right. Point number two. So you talked about remove. What's point number two?
So then there are foods that, even if whole foods, hinder somehow your detoxification processes, right? And I'm talking about avoiding these foods during the times in which you dedicate to enhance your detoxification ability, right? And so there are 5 big groups that one should avoid, at least periodically, if not permanently, but at least periodically, in order to really give your body, allow your body the opportunity to cleanse. And because the good news is that all these toxins, 99% or 95%, I don't know exactly the percentage, but many of them, more than 90%, your body can handle, and your liver can turn from liposoluble into water soluble, and then you can excrete them, right? But you need to have all the materials that the body needs in order to do that, that the liver needs and the other cells need. And also you need to reduce or eliminate the things that will hinder this biotransformation, right? And the 5 big groups are dairy products, gluten products, coffee, alcohol, and sugar. Right? So I know that a lot of people are already eliminating all these things, even just regularly, normally, but at least you dedicate 1, 2, 3 weeks a year in which you eliminate these things in order to allow yourself and your own detoxification organs and tissues to do their work.
Now, let me ask you this, Doc, because I know a lot of my listeners, and the one thing that actually popped up on there that some of them are saying, whoa, I wasn't expecting that. For some people, it's coffee. Okay. So, I think a lot of people are saying, okay, I get dairy. It's so dampening, and there's issues there. Sugar, of course. But let's talk about coffee for a little bit. Now, I do know coffee, especially when it's non-organic, is the most sprayed crop out there. And so it is loaded with pesticides. So is this all coffee? Maybe because of the caffeine, and maybe that's putting a little stress on adrenals, and your liver has to deal with it, or is it just all coffee except for certified organic? I just want to hear your take on coffee to clarify here.
And this is a great question, because there are a lot of benefits from coffee, and more people are becoming aware of it, and the coffee industry is exploding in terms of people now that didn't even drink coffee doing it for the health benefits. And I agree with many of them, right? But the first thing is what you just said. When it's not organic, it's the most pesticide loaded crop in the world, right? But the second thing that people should consider is this. If you wake up in the morning and you need your coffee to function, you need a vacation from it.
That's a good point.
If you cannot function without coffee, then you need a vacation from it. You need to rebuild your adrenals, because your coffee is whipping your adrenals, and you are an addict. You depend on something in order to function, right? So in New York, I remember when I was living there and doing my cardiology fellowship, I used to walk from my apartment to the hospital, and I passed 3 coffee shops, Starbucks and another couple, right? And I saw, even before they opened, the line of people waiting to get their dose, right? And there was a methadone clinic also. And the same thing happened. There was a line of people waiting for their dose in order to function, and you couldn't tell the difference between them.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy. My wife was a barista for 5 years, and she loves her coffee. And but both her and I do realize that we don't need coffee every day. And so for her, and for her, sometimes she'll do it, maybe 5 days a week. Sometimes it's 3, sometimes it's 7, but she always is taking off. And when she's doing it, it's it's probably like 75 to 80 grams of caffeine a day. It's a smaller amount. For myself, I typically do it maybe twice a week. I do coffee. I do a lot of matcha green tea as well, and herbal teas, and mix those in there. But I think it's a really good point that a lot of us, especially if you, as Dr. Alejandro is talking about here, if you're a person who, if you get off coffee, it wrecks your day. You either get a headache, or you literally have a hard time functioning just because you're so tired. that your system is relying on that. So it is good to cycle it in and out. And especially as Dr. Alejandro is talking about, and in his book, Clean 7, he really gets into, taking 7 days off from it, letting your body reset, not become dependent upon the stimulant that is, a lot of caffeinated beverages. So I think these are great points.
Now, for your readers that love coffee, I have a good news. Coffee may be even beneficial in other ways than just drinking it, right? Because now there's a lot of evidence of what coffee enemas can do. And I mean, not that it's a new thing, because Dr. Gerson with his Gerson therapy was using coffee enemas for a long time. But I don't want to give the impression that coffee is poison. It's only poison if you're addicted to it and you can't function without it.
Yeah. That's great. And again, I do want to kind of say a lot of people are going and getting it from these conventional chains where the coffee is not organic. It's been sprayed with chemicals. And so if you are consuming the conventional coffee, and especially in the way that people get their coffees today, it is so bad. It's whipped cream. It's these syrups that are loaded with sugar. I mean, if you go and look on a website of some of these major chains and look at the calories from hydrogenated fats and sugar that people are putting in their coffee today, it's absolutely mind-blowing. So if you are going to buy coffee, make it organic and healthy.
In ancient times, shamans and healers used to use coffee as a medicinal thing, as just like tobacco, right? In ceremonies, and people would get these heightened experiences and probably see spirits, or right. But nowadays, it's just a thing that we use so constantly that we're kind of used to and resistant to, right?
Yeah, it's a great point. And I think too, if you look at Ayurvedic and Chinese medicine, different things are recommended for different people. Not everybody is meant to drink coffee. Not everybody's meant to have a certain type of tea. And, as we've heard the saying go, one man's food is another man's poison. And so I think it's important to know your body, know yourself. Some people do really great with coffee. Some people do better with a lot of the, things like green teas or oolongs or matcha or rooibos. And some people do better with really no stimulants. So it just really depends upon the person. Let's jump into our number 3. What is our number 3 in those four pillars of functional medicine?
So remove is the first one. Restore is the second one, right? So you are restoring all the good nutrients that the micronutrients, that the phytonutrients that were lacking if you were eating just from cans and jars and tubes, right? And then the third R would be reinoculate, right? In the first R, remove, it's also the removal of the bad organisms in your gut. And then the third R talks about the reinoculation of the good bacteria in your gut.
So jumping back to number 2, what are some of your favorite foods? If somebody's saying, okay, I need to get a lot of nutrients here, I've been nutrient deficient and I know it, what are some of the best foods or food groups that people should be getting?
Well, everybody should up their consumption of vegetables, right?
Yeah.
Vegetables and fruits are God's gift to humanity for good nutrition, and not only humanity, for animals too.
Yeah.
So and amongst the vegetables, green vegetables are the royal family of the vegetables, right? So in a big overview, that's what I have to say about that. But then anything that comes from nature, anything that's a whole food is great, like seeds and nuts and there's so much that we can find in nature, right? And in supermarkets too, that are really good for us.
All right, let's jump into number 3 then. What do you mean by reinoculate?
Probiotics, right? Or fermented foods, right? And this is something that we are in the beginnings of understanding, right? But we know now that there's more bacteria in our gut, in a healthy gut, than cells in your entire body. We know now that the bacteria in our gut and other organisms communicate with every cell in your body and can promote health, but also can cause disease, right? So understanding that there's a biome, that there's a population of organisms that we must maintain healthy is really important. So reinoculation is about first removing the bad organisms and then re-inoculating or replanting or repopulating the intestines with good organisms. And there's plenty of good probiotics out there. I love your SBO probiotics. And I recommend it to a lot of people, even though I sell probiotics too. So I understand that aspect is a very important aspect of health.
Yeah. So with probiotics, again, this is key that, when you look at, and you use the word reinoculation. Now, when most people hear that, their head might go to something like an actual shot that people are getting today, immunizations, those sort of things. But the cool thing that you and I both know when you study ancient medicine and nature is that we were actually created to have our immune systems built up through being inoculated through different foods and exposures and bacteria. So as you're talking, go ahead, Doc.
You get me excited. Well, the first inoculation we have is through the birth canal.
That's right.
The bacteria that are in the birth canal of your mom are the first bacteria, and then you take your first breath, but with it you inoculate yourself with good bacteria, right? So that is actually the first vaccine that we get from nature, right?
It is. Yeah, it's such a good point. When I wrote a book years ago called Eat Dirt, which you were so kind to, I believe, write an endorsement for. And so one of the things I wanted to say with that is that, in that book, I go through a few studies out of Japan and Asia, and they really found that, when you're eating foods that are in your regional area, you are, in fact, being inoculated. You are being exposed to different types of bacteria and microbes and things that your body adjusts to, and then it creates certain types of bacteria in your gut so it knows in the future it could better break down the food you eat or things you're exposed to. And so it's pretty amazing when you look at some of the research on, or even something like raw honey. Raw honey, especially if it's local to your area, has 200 different types of microbes that build up and strengthen your immune system over time. So one of the things I recommend, I used to run a functional medicine clinic, and I had patients and a lot of moms come in, and I told them, hey, go to the local farmer's market, grab food out of the dirt, wash it off a little bit, but give that to your kids, get raw local honey, give those to your kids. Let's start building kids' immune systems that way. I think it's a good way to do it.
And to look at it from the other side, right? When one of the first questions I ask any patient that comes to me, the more complicated the disease, the more I ask this question is, were you born through the birth canal or were you born by C-section?
Yeah.
Were you given a lot of antibiotics? Were you breastfed or not? Were you giving a lot of antibiotics growing up as a kid? And the more that these things add up, being born by C-section, not being breastfed, and having a lot of antibiotics when they were kids, the more the complicated and the serious the diseases are down the line. So that talks about the other aspect, right? The good bacteria, maintaining the good bacteria is really good, but killing it off and not giving nature the opportunity to inoculate you, that is also really bad.
It is, man. It's a great point. I'm so glad you're bringing up these points here. And so part of that, everybody listening, what are some of your favorite foods or let's say, do you have a couple that maybe you eat? I'd love to hear actually about you. Like, what do you eat on a regular basis, or are there any probiotic rich foods that we could find in your fridge?
Well, the fermented foods are the foods that will actually give you the most value for reinoculation, but not only that, for prebiotic value, because it's not only enough to put those little animals in there, you got to feed them too, right? And prebiotics are the food that they eat, which comes in vegetables, but especially fermented foods have a big value in order to maintain a good, healthy intestinal flora.
That's good. So like sauerkraut, kimchi, miso, coconut yogurt, I think, because you mentioned stay away from dairy, but coconut yogurt I've seen, or coconut kefir, I've seen at places like Whole Foods Market and some other health food stores.
Yeah, I'm getting into that. And I'm trying to get my kids into that.
That's great. I love it. All right, let's talk about our number 4. What do you got for me?
So our number 4 is repair, right? I call the intestinal lining the Achilles heel of humanity. This is their weakest point, right? Because it was not designed for the insult that it's suffering these days with all these toxic chemicals that we're putting into our intestine. Not only that, even if you eat the wholest of whole foods, even if you eat just organic foods. The quantity, the frequency, and the variety of mixtures that we use all at the same time is not natural, and it ends up affecting the intestinal lining, right? So that's why intermittent fasting and fasting are becoming so popular and showing people the benefits, because we are eating too much, too often, and too many things, right? So the walls of your intestines are where kind of health starts, and disease begins, right? When that is broken, and you've spoken about this so many times, when you break the integrity, when holes are created, when it becomes hyperpermeable, the condition called leaky gut or hyperpermeability develops, and then the immune system, which lives right on the other side of the intestinal wall, 70% of your immune system lives right there. Why? Because it's like the army. It's located at the borders that are in danger of strangers coming in. And we only have 3 borders, really: our skin, our lungs, and our intestines, right? And that's where our immune system is located. But 70% of it, because a lot of the strangers coming through our intestines are located around the intestines. And so your intestinal immune system depends on the integrity of the intestinal and lining, and that's where autoimmune diseases and all kinds of chronic diseases and inflammation begins, right? So the 4th R is about repairing that, right? Creating the conditions for your body, because we as doctors, we don't do anything. We just create the conditions for the real doctor, nature, to take care of things, because it's within us. All the mechanisms of repair, all the knowledge of repair. In fact, your body is always trying to repair everything that's broken. We just have to create the conditions. And the conditions for that is we have to give the intestinal digestive tube a rest. In order, just like if you break a bone, you have to give your arm a rest, so for it to heal. And you have to have the correct nutrients available for that, the building blocks for our cells to build more cells and cover those holes, right?
And and that's one of the keys here that I want everybody to recognize. It's such a wise point here that you said this, is that it's not a food that heals you. Your body heals itself. That's why intermittent fasting is so powerful. And I know that you have part of your Clean 7 program, but intermittent fasting has been recommended from everybody from Hippocrates to Maimonides. It's referenced in the Bible. It's referenced.
The prophet in the Muslim religion also used to fast
fasting.
I think it was every Tuesday and every Thursday. I learned that today from a Muslim patient of mine.
So as you can see, fasting has been done for a long period of time, and it's done for mental and spiritual breakthroughs, but it's also done for our own health in a lot of cases, because when you can rest your organ systems, as Dr. Alejandro is talking about, your body now, it gives it a better chance to do the 4R he's talking about, which is repair itself. And so I love that point you're bringing up, and that now your body is better able, because it's not working. Your intestines are typically working all the time. When it's doing nothing, when it's not having to digest something, it's better able to regenerate and heal those new and healthy tissues. It's a great point. I'm glad you said that.
Think about this. If you draw a line in time for thousands, hundreds of thousands, or even millions of years in which we've been around as animals and as humans, right? The times in which we had food available 24/7 is a microscopic dot at the end of it. For thousands or millions of years, we've been obliged, we've been forced to go from fasting to feasting. We feasted when we found food, and that's what animals in the wild are still doing. Feasting when they find food, and then they spend the rest of the time looking for food, and fasting, forced to fast, right? So our genes have evolved for so long like that. And only recently they're eating all the time. So the genes don't even have the ability, while you're eating, to dedicate themselves to the repair mechanisms.
Yeah. So we may not agree on that point of how long we've been around, but I do agree with your point on being a hunter-gatherer in terms of, consuming things that we can hunt and gather. And at the same time, again, intermittent fasting, your body heals itself. It's important to remember, turmeric does not heal you. Broccoli does not heal you. Your body, or this intelligence within our body, our spirits, actually heal our bodies. And that's why fasting is so incredibly powerful. If you've never tried it, especially as Dr. Alejandro is talking about intermittent fasting, it's really, you're skipping breakfast, essentially. Maybe you're eating, at noon, 3 o'clock, and 6 o'clock. Maybe you're eating between a 4 and maximum 8-hour window. And this is really, I know that you're an expert in gut health, and I've seen really good results in patients I've worked with in the past, especially with healing leaky gut and digestive issues. But you're talking about gut issues and immune system issues, especially. They react really well to fasting. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. Listen, fasting has been around for a long time. There's hospitals in Germany that have whole wings for people that fast. In Russia,
Wow.
it's a common thing that people do. There's clinics that people go from all over the world to fast for 30 days, for 60 days, right? And by the way,
Wow.
you said we don't agree on how long we've been around. I don't really know. That's why I say 100.
It's hard to know. Yeah.
Who knows, right? I mean, some people have theories, but
Yeah.
but yeah, fasting is really important from many points of view, and it allows the resting of your organism in order to be able to repair itself.
It's great. So you've covered a lot of information. You covered the 4 R's, sort of remove, restore, and then we talked about reinoculate here as well.
Yeah. And there's a 5th R, which is relaxation.
Hey, let's do it. Let's jump into 5. Here we go.
The 5 is relaxation, and it's so important, from spending time just sleeping and resting to resting your mind with either engaging in sports or certain activities that slow your thinking process, to meditation, right? So just throwing the 5th R out there.
I love it. And listen, that's a huge deal, because as you're talking about this, it's sort of that fight or flight thing. When you are stressed out all the time, it's like you can't go and eat a cheeseburger or while you're running a marathon. It's like your body, your energy is somewhere else. When you're stressed, your energy is all in your brain. It's in your extremities. It's not in your central areas, your organ system. So they're regenerating themselves. And so that's a great point. Let me ask for you personally, what are some things you like to do to relax and get rid of the stress?
So and I write about this in actually all my books, right? But for me, meditation is really important. But meditation, not only a practice that I do at some point in the day or the morning or wherever, when I isolate myself and I look for the right conditions, and people like to do it in a silent place. And for me, meditation is more important when it's in action, right? And I am actually practicing certain things as I do my day, even as I'm speaking to you, right? In order to become somewhat more present. And for example, right now, as you listen to me, put some of your attention on both your feet. Feel your feet from inside. Feel them touching the sock or the shoe or the floor. Feel the temperature, the humidity. And as you do that, continue to do that as you listen to me. And as you do that, you will notice that somehow things become a little more vivid and more slow, right? Why? Because your feet are only in the present. And when you put your attention on them, you are anchoring your attention in the present, as opposed to, being your attention going into your head, into the past, into the future, into interpretation or whatever, right? So I always try to put some of my attention in the present, even as I do other things.
I love it. It's such a great principle. There's a book I read years ago that I just love. It's called Practicing the Presence, but it's all about, being here in this present moment. It's also about being connected to God and being just aware and conscious of things. I mean, so many people go through their day. It's really easy you're in traffic jams. The first thing we do, people turn on their phone and start flipping through social media. And then it's like all this stuff versus being actually present. And today we have so many more distractions. I mean, you talked about earlier the toxicity of our environment and our household products and water and Teflon pan. We talked about all this stuff, but the toxicity today that's in the media we're exposed to, of things that are going and grabbing our attention that are unhealthy. I mean, I think about this like, people live to be entertained today a lot of times. It's like, I'm going to watch 4 hours of TV a day and flip through social media for 2 hours, 6 hours, versus imagine what you could have accomplished and actually how it can help your mental state if you just read a book. You know what I'm saying? I mean, it's just it's powerful to even think about.
My kids are 7 and 9 now, right? And sometimes they say, "Papa, I'm bored." I say, "Great, great. You need to learn how to be bored because you didn't come here to be entertained."
That's a good dad line. I like that. That's a good principle. You're bored. Good. It's good to be bored sometimes.
Yes.
I love it. Well, I want to encourage everybody, make sure to check out Dr. Alejandro Junger here with us. His new book, Clean 7. You can just go to Amazon right now, go to barnesandnoble.com right now, and just Google search Clean 7. Check out his book. It's really 7 days to transform your life. For 7 days, you can practice some of the things he talked about, from intermittent fasting, getting the bad stuff out, consuming that list of foods he's put in there. And it's so critical for so many different organ systems, for healing and rejuvenating your lungs, your digestive system, your liver, your skin is huge. You just mentioned this earlier. Your skin, along with your lungs and your intestinal lining, those are the barriers for your body that we have to heal in order to heal properly. And so I want to encourage you guys, check out his new book, Clean 7. And last question I have for you, are you a Uruguay soccer fan?
I used to be when I lived there, but it gave me so much suffering that I stopped.
That's funny. I remember. So I played soccer growing up, played in high school, played some club in college. And so I loved, I played soccer a lot. I used to follow English Premier League, and I grew up in Columbus, Ohio. And the team just started when I was a freshman in high school. So I'd go watch the Columbus Crew play. But I remember watching, this is years ago, World Cup, Uruguay. I mean, they've had, maybe it's been a few years, but they've had some good teams over the years. I remember they had one of the best keepers I'd ever seen. He was fantastic.
Yes, but you have to understand that South America and Brazil, and even Mexico, soccer is a big thing. People commit suicide when their teams lose. I mean, it's an intense thing, and people suffer. And I used to be one of them. I used to suffer when my team lost. I was on this team called Peñarol, and so I just gave it up.
That's so funny. It reminds me. So you grow up in Ohio. Everyone's an Ohio State Buckeye. I mean, it's more like college football, maybe in the South or or some other areas too. Maybe it's the closest equivalent, but I know it's at a whole nother level there. So I want to let you know, Doc, man, I respect you so much. I love what you do. I've read your books over the years, and I believe you're one of the best people out there, just educating people and bringing sound wisdom. That's really a combination of ancient practices and today's science. And so just know that, man, I'm one of your biggest fans. I love what you've done. I want to encourage everybody, check out Dr. Alejandro Junger. Check out all of his books, Clean Gut, Clean 7. You can find them in bookstores across the country as well as online. And I want to say, Doc, thanks so much for being part of the podcast today.
Yeah, I love it. Thank you. Anytime.
Awesome. Hey, we'll talk soon. Thanks, everybody.
This podcast is for information purposes only. Statements and views expressed in this podcast are not medical advice and have not been evaluated by the Food and Drug Administration. Opinions of guests are their own, and this podcast does not endorse or accept responsibility for statements made by guests. In some cases, individuals on this podcast may have a direct or indirect financial interest in products or services referred to herein.